So a guy walks into the optician's clinic, he's squinting and he's really uncomfortable. And he says to the optician, I can't see it, everything's really blurry. So the optician nods and asks him to sit down. He explains what the problem is and he says, well, let me see if I can help you. So the optician takes off his own glasses, hands them to the man. The man puts them on, stands up, clearly still struggling, bumps into a chair. He says, well, this is ridiculous. It's even worse. So the optician says, well, that's really bizarre because those glasses have worked perfectly for me for years. Welcome back to Quit Your Diet, Think to Shrink. And if you're done with diets, calorie counters, meal plans, then you're in the right place because I'm Michael Dawson, the author of Quit Your Diet, and I'm here to help you build a 14-day roadmap to quitting diets forever. You can click around here somewhere to do a quick 12-question quiz to help you determine what level your weight problem lies. And of course, membership to my website is currently free at actionfactorypublishing.com, where members enjoy all the free benefits, tools, downloads, and the group invites. So jump on that while you can, while it's still free. In this short set of videos, we've been talking about the 7 assumptions that I make about all of my clients, and I will make about you, and I think you should make about yourself. In this episode, I want to talk about one of them, and it's called You Are the Expert of Your Own Life. This one I don't get much dispute with. It seems obvious when we say it out loud, but so many times we think that we're the experts of other people's lives, and vice versa. And if you want to find out more about these assumptions that I'm talking about, go to the beginning of this playlist. I'll go back down the episodes and you'll find the first video in this series where I talk about assumptions. Now, in my therapeutic work, we're often dealing with serious stuff. I always begin with 7 assumptions, and you are the expert of your own life is one of them. If you're the expert in the room, then surely the answer to the problem must lie with you, which raises an interesting question, which is, what's the point of me? Let me tell you a real story that showed me just how powerful this assumption can be. So I was once asked to speak to a young man who was self-harming. His mum was a counsellor and he'd already seen a couple of other professionals from different disciplines, but nothing had really helped him. Now, he was suggested to come and see me because, without going too deep into it, I was kind of embedded in the youth service across East Manchester to be a kind of first port of call for young people who had issues, mental health issues, because of course there was a stigma attached, and there was no stigma attached in talking to me because they knew me, they'd seen me around. I was in colleges, youth clubs, community organisation. That was what my job was. So we met in a college side room, and the young lad was friendly, open, smart, engaging, absolutely no issues with him at all. So obviously, as I just said, he's the expert of this particular problem. So there is a temptation for us all to offer solutions to other people. But let's be honest, we've all got advice, haven't we, that we're ready to give, and most of us really love giving it. But it's resisting that urge to give that advice that's really the key, I believe. So I stuck with the idea, just like I always did, and I asked him why he'd come to see me. He told me about his self-harm, and he described to me that he'd been basically scratching his arms. He'd been doing it from here upwards above his elbows, and he was willing to show me some of the marks he'd scratched himself. I obviously become curious because he's the expert, so I started to ask him about what the intention of it was. As someone who was stranger to this idea, he couldn't really explain that. I also said that it was interesting. I couldn't see it when he came in the room. Why was that? And he said, no, I do it all above my elbows, above inside my shirt. I said, oh, okay, why is that then? And he said, well, if I do it anywhere else, people will see it. So I let that kind of roll in his mind. We'd already agreed that when I asked him about kind of suicidal thoughts and that kind of thing, he just scoffed at me. He thought that was silly. Then I asked him who did know about this self-harm, and interestingly enough, just his mum. None of his friends knew, none of his family knew, just his mum. I was a little bit curious then. I'm saying, well, why does it matter if people know? I'm just curious as to why that's the case. And he couldn't really answer that. I still couldn't get an answer as to why he didn't do it in other places or even do it more seriously and what the intention was. So we had a really good, interesting chat about the whole thing. So we wrapped up the session, and this young man was one of those, I would say, a fairly rare case where you do get a follow-up and you do get some feedback, because I did see him a couple of weeks later and he'd stopped completely doing this. Naturally, I was curious. I asked him why he'd stopped after trying all these other kind of therapeutic ideas. And what he said actually just blew me away. He said, "You were the only one who didn't tell me to stop." And that just blew my mind, because that was it. That was the whole thing. Maybe he'd been heard instead of being fixed. Maybe he'd been understood instead of being instructed. Or maybe we in asking the right questions, we pulled some of those thoughts out in his mind that really did not make sense. And this is the power of the idea that the client is the expert in their own life. So you probably say, well, what does this mean to you? I would say, just like in all of this little series of videos, I'd encourage you to use this assumption when you talk to yourself. Because let's be honest, there's a million gurus online, and there's endless advice from friends and family. Everyone seems to have the right answers to your problem. But if you remember that you're the expert, not them, there's so much freedom in that. It's liberating. It puts the power back in your hands. Let me finish with one quick story. When I train professionals like social workers, police officers, therapists, I use a little exercise that I designed. Imagine it as a role play. One is a client and the other person is what you might call the therapist, the talk therapist. The person who's playing the role of the client, they're given some instructions. Now, their problem is so blatantly obvious, it would drive you crazy, but they are not allowed to know what the problem is. The challenge for the therapist is they are not allowed to give advice. They can only ask questions because the client is the expert. Let me give you an example. For example, we have a client who's had a hole in his pocket of his trousers. Now, he would go into the therapist and he would say, "Oh, I don't know what's happening here, and I keep losing things." And the therapist could clearly see what the problem was, but wasn't allowed to say, but they would question and cajole him. And what I found fascinating about this exercise is the answers that we came up with. The solutions were ridiculous. I mean, we'd come up with the idea that maybe we had someone who would wear their pajamas to work. We had a man who started to wear skirts. Now, I make this point because, of course, the expert is the client. And that was the whole point of this exercise. I'm trying to make this an issue. Even we should not be so smart that we can tell someone what dangers are in their lives, what they fear, what they don't fear. They're the expert, and we're there to kind of help them find answers that might not be what we would do, but they're certainly work for them. Thank you for being with me. If you've got anything out of this little video, tap the like button. It takes just half a second, but it makes a huge difference. It helps us share this journey to a diet-free life with more and more people. I also answer all the comments and questions personally. And remember, you can join us anytime by signing up at actionfactorypublishing.com. It's totally free. And somewhere around here, there's a 12-question quiz that'll help you figure out what level your weight challenge sits. And I'll give you some free tools to tackle that at the right level. So thank you for being there. In the next video, I'm going to be talking about how you can predict your future by understanding your past as we move into the next assumption. So if you want a full rundown of the 7 assumptions, just go back to the start of this little playlist. See you next time. And if you're like many of my clients, you're done with diet plans and food diaries and calorie counters, then you're not alone. Please don't forget to take half a second to tap the subscribe or thumbs up to get 2 videos a week and plenty more along the way. Site membership is free, and you can take the 12-question quiz around here somewhere. Did I already say that? Yes, I did. My name is Michael Dawson, the author of Quit Your Diet, Think to Shrink. Thanks for being there, and I'll see you in the next video.